Welcome back. We're now going to look at exchange rates, and this carries on nicely from the previous recording where we also mentioned exchange rates and saw a diagram. The value of exchange rates affect demand for imports and also exports. An exchange rate is the value of one currency expressed in terms of another. So an example could be that a pound can be exchanged for $1.20. Currencies change in value against each other all of the time. They can appreciate, so our pound is worth more, and they can depreciate, where our pound is worth less, and they can actually fluctuate on a minute by minute basis. Changes in exchange rates can affect the transportation and sale of goods or services imported into a country, as well as the price of goods exported abroad from the UK. So it impacts on prices of things imported and prices on things that are exported from the UK. Increasing globalization and improved technology have increased the number of businesses that buy and sell overseas, and all of these businesses are going to be affected by changes in exchange rates. This can be in a positive way or a negative way. A change in exchange rates might affect a business in the following ways. Exchange rate changes can increase or they can lower the price of a product sold abroad, the selling price to the end customer. And this will affect demand. If there's an increase in price, we may see a reduction in demand. If there is an reduction in price, we may see an increase in demand. It will also impact on the price of imported raw materials for an organisation, so perhaps buying in strawberries from abroad or precious metals. The price of competitors' products may change in the home market. We might produce and sell in the UK. China may sell in the UK, but China would be subject to those exchange rates. An increase in the exchange rate, so an appreciation in the value of the pound, will mean that prices abroad go up. Exports become more expensive for other countries to buy, so it lowers sales. So that's focusing on exports. With imports, the price of imported raw materials falls, leading to a fall in price, and this increases sales and increases profits. Let's have a look at these under the impact of exchange rates. We have the appreciation of the pound, and this is where the pound becomes stronger. Let's summarise here for future reference. Imports become cheaper. Happy days. Exports become dearer. If the value of the pound increases, more foreign currency can be purchased for the same number of pounds. We have a numerical example here. If the value of the pound changes from £1 being worth $1.20 to $1 being worth $1.25, then £100 would now convert to 125 US dollars instead of $120. So this is a good thing. Let's refer back to our diagram that we saw in the previous recording. Now this was where we had a fall in value of the pound and we saw that exports were good, they were better, and imports were more expensive, so we were sad. When we have an appreciation in the pound, we can use a mnemonic, which is spiced. Let's see what this means. A strong pound makes imports cheap and exports dear. I'll put this separately because it doesn't link to the part in pink above. The pink is depreciation of the pound, a fall in value. And in our box here, we have an appreciation of the pound. So our imports here, if we have a strong pound, imports are cheap. If we have a strong pound, exports are dear. Let's go back to our notes and look at the depreciation of the pound. This occurs when the pound has become weaker. For example, £1 was $1.20. It's now $1.10. This would mean that less foreign currency can be obtained for the same amount of domestic currency. So our pound is becoming weaker. So imports are dear and exports are cheap. Let's have a look at lecture example 2 on exchange rates. The price of an item is $25. If the exchange rate is £1 is $1.25, what would the price be in pounds sterling? So what we do here is we take the dollar amount of 25 and we divide it by our exchange rate, and we can get $1.25 per pound. This would lead to a price of £20. We also have lecture example 3 on exchange rates. What does a fall in the value of the pound mean? So this is depreciation of the pound. For example, we could have had an exchange rate of £1 is $1.20, and now a pound is $1.10. So we can now buy less for our £1. The pound has become weaker. We'll get less foreign currency for our pound. And here we're looking at the depreciation. So referring back, well, the first option in the lecture example was lower prices, and this really isn't clear. Are they talking about the domestic price, the import price, the export price? So I don't feel it's that one. Lower import prices, let's refer back to our diagram here. We're importing in our diagram here, and we have depreciation, and we've got an unhappy face. Lower import prices would be a good thing, so it's not that one. The final option here is lower export prices with depreciation of the pound, and we're looking at our diagram at the top here. So highlighted in green, we have a smiley face. We're happy. Exports become cheaper. So the correct answer is number 3. Welcome back. To finish off this chapter, we're going to look at risk and uncertainty for a business. It states here that risk and uncertainty are not the same thing, so I'd recommend you learn the difference. We have the definitions in our notes. With risk, this is the possible variation in an outcome from what is expected to happen. When we talk about outcomes, it could be a variation in sales, a variation in demand, and perhaps that impacting on the profit for an organisation. And where it's talking about what's expected to happen, perhaps due to an unplanned event. And we have the example here. There is a risk that a product may not be attractive in the market. Now, we can usually quantify these risks because we would have had some past experience of this. Another one would be a risk of recession. Uncertainty is the inability to predict the outcome from an activity due to lack of information. The lack of information makes it difficult to predict. No past experience. And the example we've got here is that there could be uncertainty around the level of demand for a product. The business knows there are customers willing to buy their product, but they're uncertain as to whether they will buy it in the next week or perhaps the next month. So these cannot be quantified. A key risk for a business is that if it fails to achieve its objective. And companies usually have profit and maximising returns to shareholders, the business owners, as their main objective. Therefore, any risk that impacts on business profits will be a risk for the business. Now, there are increasing risks faced by organisations that compete in a global market. Let's have a look at these. The first one is foreign exchange risk, and this is where our exchange rates impact on the profit of the business. We saw a lot of this in the previous recording. It could be in a positive way, perhaps the appreciation of the pound, which is a good thing, or negatively, a depreciation of the pound. But additional costs could place a significant strain on the business profits. If the exchange rate moves, it could mean that revenue received for a sale is actually, in fact, much lower. There are also political risks. It could impact on the stability of the country in which the product is being sold. It could reduce sales. It could increase import duties or increase tariffs, and this would increase costs for a business. So, another key risk. Talking about the stability of a country, it could mean that there's a change in government. It could mean changes in laws and regulation, perhaps health and safety rules or tax, labour laws and trading laws. They could have a negative impact on the business. This links in to risks relating to foreign laws and regulations. It could mean that trade is restricted. It could mean additional costs for the business. Safety laws, perhaps, on particular products. We also have commercial risks. The risk that a product is not desirable in a particular market, perhaps sun cream in the Arctic. Perhaps that the organisation doesn't understand competition in the new market abroad. So the product that we're trying to sell is not competitively priced. There are transportation risks. So the goods in transit on the aeroplane flying over to the foreign country, there's an increased risk of damage or theft, and this will increase cost and impact on profit. The final one is credit risk. With all transactions, payment terms are agreed. You might have a 3-month agreement for receiving monies, and there's a risk of non payment. So, an increase in the levels of bad debt, and this increases expenses for a business. In lecture example 4, we need to look at which of the following statements are true. The first one here is uncertainty denotes the inability to predict an outcome. And this is the correct answer as per our definition from the top of the page. The second one, businesses will always face risk, but they will not face uncertainty. Well, the environment changes very rapidly, it's very dynamic, and there will always be uncertainty. So, incorrect. The third one, uncertainty is the variation in an outcome. This is not correct because variation in an outcome is the definition of risk, not uncertainty. And the final one here, risk and uncertainty mean the same thing. Definitely not. They're not the same thing, and you need to learn the difference between the two. Social responsibility, ethics, and sustainability. Let's begin with CSR, or corporate social responsibility. If you first of all think about your own social responsibility, how do you behave in relation to the environment around you? Well, imagine you're walking to the shops. You might think about not dropping litter on the street. When you go into the shops, you're mindful of other customers and you're not taking what isn't yours. And again, how you interact with others and the world around you, giving way to people at the shop door, helping other people, and just being considerate. Now, corporate social responsibility, we have the key terms in the box at the top of our page. CSR is concerned with the ways in which organisations manage its responsibilities towards society. And society is a large statement. You can pretty much think of anyone that the organisation impacts on, whether this is directly or more indirectly. The responsibilities of an organisation will actually change over time. It's important to engage with both internal stakeholders and external stakeholders as well to find out what social and ethical issues matter most to them. So let's see what this actually means in practice. Having a core set of values and behaviours that mean the business is a positive force in society. What we're doing is trying to give back more than it's taking out. And this can mean that being a corporate citizen is treating employees fairly and equally and ensuring social justice in the workplace. So it's about how we treat our employees. These are likely people that we interact with every day. They're part of our business and they have family lives as well. They could also potentially be customers as well. Of course, there are rules about employees, but corporate social responsibility goes beyond that. It can mean safeguarding employees' health and safety, a basic requirement. But again, CSR goes above and beyond. CSR can also be about preventing or minimising the pollution or negative impacts of a business in the real world. So it's not just about the people, but it's about our environment as well. Can organisations do things in a more environmentally friendly way? And yes, there might be costs associated with that, so decisions would have to be made. We do need to consider a broader range of stakeholders as well. It's about responding to the needs and the pressures of customers and clients in order to be sustainable. So, an external focus as well. What do these stakeholders want and what is important to them? If we as an organisation become more sustainable, it might be that we can gain more customers and more suppliers in our supply chain who also want that as well, having the CSR attitude. And it's about protecting and promoting human rights as well, recognising that we impact not just on employees, customers, clients, but on society and those around us as well. Being a good corporate citizen will require investment. We need to invest money on the organisation's behalf into corporate social responsibility. It's not free and it also does take time, but an organisation can reap a number of benefits from investing in CSR. It can help enhance the business reputation. We're doing the right thing by the world. We're helping. It can help with our trade, it can help with our business. And we're willing to pay that little bit more for it to have organic or ethical or environmentally friendly products. It can also help with employee recruitment, motivation, and retention. We don't just reward employees with a salary, but it could also be the employees being proud of the company that they work for, feel that they want to align with the same responsibilities and feeling looked after. It will create loyalty to the organisation. CSR can also help attract investment and improve relations with current investors. Having the right stance, the organisation having the right stance, recognising we have adopted good practices that will benefit us in the future. It will help increase competitiveness and market positioning. Perhaps we're using more recycled materials they're typically cheaper. It can help improve our processes and reduce costs as well. So it's about operational efficiency as well. More output with less input. So, what could organisations put into place? We have some examples here with CSR strategies and initiatives. And these can be both internal on the left hand side and external. So, looking down our internal methods, first of all, we can look at employee welfare. We could follow the law in terms of sick leave, but we could go beyond that, perhaps with healthcare. We're going beyond statutory levels. We could improve working conditions, for example, the facilities offered to our staff, perhaps a subsidised gym and looking after staff well-being. Looking at job design in terms of work and life balance, adjusting, allowing employees to adjust their working practices so they can manage their home life better. And also fair pay, not just paying the minimum wage, but paying a living wage. Externally, with regard to CSR, we can look at environmental sustainability. So, looking at pollution, consumption, and sustainability initiatives such as recycling. We can look at more detail in the products that we're producing, making sure that they don't cause harm or can be misused because they'll have a cost to society. We can look at marketing, ethical advertising messages, and no pressured sales. Dealing with our suppliers in a more fair way, sticking to contracts by paying on time and dealing as agreed. Equal opportunities with employment externally and looking after the community, perhaps in the form of local sponsorship, local investment. We're part of the community, so they're here would be giving something back. And also, any consideration for human rights would be good CSR as well. So, let's look in more detail about what sustainability is. And we can look at it from three perspectives. We have the economic perspective, the social perspective, and the environmental perspective. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So, we're looking at if we continue doing what we're doing now, that it doesn't stop people in the future doing the same thing and meeting their own needs. So, as an example of that, if as an organisation we're using a scarce resource, a mineral, are we putting certain future generations at risk? If we're releasing pollution into the atmosphere, what will be the impact on future generations' health and well-being in living their own lives? So, for industrial development to be sustainable, it has to address our three important issues: economic efficiency, social fairness, and environmental accountability. Few businesses or organisations can truly call themselves 100% sustainable. Many, however, are well on their way to sustainability as a result of incorporating the sustainability ideals into their business operations. It's a more common and recent trend. We're moving in the right direction and we're a lot better than we were 5 to 10 years ago. So let's now have a look at the impact that this has on the business, the effect on business. Sustainable development is about making decisions, making business decisions. So, for example, should we invest in new machinery? Should we invest in new machinery because our current machinery releases lots of pollution into the air? Will it help protect the environment? Will it improve society? And will it provide economic development? So, with our environment, replacing the machinery would mean a reduction in the pollution. Considering the social sustainability, does that new machine mean that we're replacing labour hours and redundancy is now um, being considered? Well, we might not want to do that. We might want the staff to stay with us for their innovation and their ideas. So it's about being clear about decisions, the outcomes. Businesses need to adopt a clear, well thought out strategy, well thought out sustainable strategy. And this should give them the edge amongst competition. And all businesses want that. So CSR should be woven into the culture of an organisation. It's currently voluntary for businesses to undertake and report on sustainability measures, but the government is debating whether to make sustainable reporting and assurance mandatory. And there's a chance this will happen in the future. So lots of organisations are adopting CSR policies now to anticipate legislation to be prepared for the future.